Concluding moments and minutes of the year 5780 of the Jewish calendar, when, according to biblical tradition, the world was brought into being as we know it. Humankind was created on day 6, and we're about to enter the 5781st year of our existence as a race, as a extended family. So, first of all, Mazel Tov. Happy birthday, friends. I'm going to start with a joke. I know many of you love jokes. I, for one, like sharing jokes. The challenge with a virtual conversation like this is I don't know how well the jokes went over because I can't hear you, see you in close proximity. But you'll give me thumbs up and all the wonderful emojis that you possibly can to let me know if we're in business and if I haven't gotten rusty. So friends, you know the story about Leroy, the town Shlemazel, the town Nudnik. You know the difference, friends, between a Shlemazel and a Shlemiel? A Shlemazel, and then there's a Nudnik. So the Shlemazel is the one who always ends up spilling soup on the Shlemiel. And the Nudnik always comes around and asks, what kind of soup was it? Okay, here's the joke of Leroy, the Shlemazel. He comes to a beautiful party in a beautiful mansion of the town's business person who is well regarded. And they're walking to the back of the home. There's a bar, there's food, there's canapes. Wonderful. What happens? At some point, as they're mingling, the master of the home turns to the fellow guests and says, I have a 10-foot man-eating alligator in the pool. And any one of you who will jump into the pool and conquer and vanquish the alligator, I will give $1 million. Wow. No sooner had he finished his words that Leroy was in the pool. Splash! Everybody watches him fighting for his life, and all heck breaks loose, chaos. And 10 minutes later, the lifeless body of the alligator rises to the top of the pool, and Leroy gets out drained, emotionally done. And he gets up, and the master of the home says, Leroy, I reckon I owe you $1 million. Leroy says, I'm not interested in the money. The fellow says, what about a latest Porsche? He says, no, not interested. What about a nice Rolex? He said, nope. How about stock options? Not interested. He said, then what are you interested in? He said, I want the name of the fool who threw me into the pool. Fantastic. We're off to a good start. I love it. This is going to be a good year. It's going to be a good year because they say that whatever happens on Rosh Hashanah, the whole year follows. So if I can make you laugh tonight, that will mean this whole year, hopefully, will be one long year of laughter. Let me continue with a beautiful idea that I think is very worth sharing. And I have to tell you, this year I'm speaking, as I always do, but in greater particular attention to, I'm speaking actually from the heart, and I'm speaking to myself, and I'm merely allowing you to listen in. That's okay. Okay? I'm going to talk to myself, and I'm going to allow you to listen in. Friends, how do you handle situations that disrupt your schedule? What about sudden emergencies that force you to put your life on hold? When plans do not go your way, what then? And many of us become disoriented when our lives take an unexpected turn. We think we know we are going and reject anything that gets in the way of our grand plans. We are supposed to be in control. We know best, don't we? Let me share with you a moving story. General Doron Almog is a decorated Israeli war hero, and he is the recipient of Israel's highest honor, the Israel Prize. He fought in numerous wars. He brought those responsible for the Munich massacre to justice in Lebanon. He was the first soldier to land on the runway at Entebbe. In a moving interview with us, with our community a few months ago, General Almog told me that he would have continued to climb the military ladder if not for a certain event that changed his life. In 1984, his wife gave birth to a son who they named Eran, after Doron's brother who was killed in action during the Yom Kippur War. Eran was born with severe autism. Says General Almog, this completely devastated me. My life was completely overturned. This was not meant to happen to me. I fought with a mix of anger, shame, and yes, severe disappointment. I was always the one in control of situations in life, and here I find myself completely out of my depths. It's important to note, friends, that at the time, the general society looked down at children who were mentally challenged and developmentally delayed. To be honest, says Almog, that was my attitude in the beginning as well. And then something changed. I will never forget the moment. I was on a military plane heading back from Entebbe with the recently freed hostages. The mood on the plane was ecstatic. But then in the midst of the exuberant hugging and dancing and rejoicing, I was suddenly overcome with unease. I heard an inner voice calling me. It was the pain-filled voice of my speech-impaired autistic son, Eran, crying out to me from somewhere deep inside my soul, Abba, you are willing to travel to the end of the world and place your life in danger to save hostages whom you never met, yet you ignore the hostage in your own home and aren't willing to rescue the broken little boy who is a prisoner in his own mind and body, who yearns to be liberated and embraced by you? While everyone on the plane rejoiced in their newfound freedom, I cried in the knowledge that the voice of my son was right. I decided then and there that I would be different, that I would chart a new course, that the new focus of my life would be providing my son with the unconditional love, support, and dignity that he needed to help make his life more manageable and more meaningful. Physically, I may have been thousands of miles away from Iran that evening, but spiritually and emotionally, I have never been closer. That plane ride home planted the seed of Doron's new mission, a mission that motivated his early retirement. In 2003, he founded Ale Negev, a 25-acre village and multifaceted facility designed specifically for people who are physically and mentally impaired, and for children in southern Israel. And he said to me, and this is the conclusion of the interview, I have many powerful role models and teachers in life, but my greatest teacher, my greatest role model was my precious Eran, who helped teach me who I really was and who I could truly become. Friends, join me in the following thought exercise. Say you're holding a cup of coffee one morning on the subway, the tube, when someone comes along and bumps into you and shakes your arm and makes you spill the coffee everywhere. Ever happened to you? If I asked you at that moment, why did you spill coffee? You would respond, because someone bumped into me. Technically, friends, that's the wrong answer. The reason you spilled coffee is because there was coffee in your cup. Had there been tea in your cup, you would have spilled tea. Let me unpack that. You see, whatever is inside the cup you're holding in life is what will spill out when you are knocked off your course. When life comes along and shakes you, and it will, whatever is inside of you will come out. You see, it's easy to fake it until you get rattled, no? So long as the roads in our life journey are smooth and straightforward, and we can see where we're going, and there are no detours, no roadblocks, no dead ends, we can ignore what's inside our cup, and we can curate an external veneer of good character, of good cheer, of control, of poise, and we can try to escape the real work and suppress the real underlying issues in our inter and intrapersonal relationships. In short, we can get away with living on the surface. But when we encounter bumps and curves, when life comes to an unsettling halt, as it did this March, and there is nowhere to run and no place to hide, it's then that we are forced to ask the toughest question of all in life. What is in my cup? Beneath all of my layers, who am I really, and what am I made of? Friends, on the third night of Hanukkah 1944, my teacher and mentor, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, sat down to write a revealing letter to a former wartime acquaintance. In it, he describes the spiritual impact of his experience as a displaced person in Europe during World War II. And I quote, "Your letter awakened memories of the time we were together in Vichy and Nice under difficult and alien conditions. From the time when a person is uprooted from his habitual environment until he grows accustomed to the demands and conditions of his new place, in this interim, there come to light certain traits of his inner character as they are in their purity, undistorted by the expectations of society. Often these traits reveal hidden virtues of the person, virtues that may have been hidden even under himself, to himself under the layers of social convention. Fortunate is the person who doesn't allow these traits to disappear when he subsequently settles down and finds tranquility." My friends, unexpected obstacles and emergencies have the potential to bring out the best or the worst in a person. When all of our stabilizing support systems are gone, we are presented with a golden opportunity, a litmus test to see who we really are and what we really stand for. Here's a beautiful story. Sandy Greenberg recalls walking and admiring nature in New York City with his best friend, Arthur, back in 1959, after they had completed a humanities class at Columbia University. Greenberg's best friend and college roommate would soon be better known to the rest of the world as Art Garfunkel, one half of the duo Simon and Garfunkel. His recollection of that day is ironic, since less than 2 years later, Greenberg would be blind. While playing baseball one day, Greenberg's eyes cloudy and he dropped to the ground. An ophthalmologist diagnosed Greenberg with glaucoma and informed him that he sadly would never see again. Greenberg would eventually graduate from Columbia, become a Marshall Scholar at Oxford, and earn a doctorate at Harvard University. He would serve on boards of some of the most prestigious medical, scientific, and financial institutions in the world. He served as well on the administrations of Presidents Carter, Johnson, Ford, Clinton, and Bush. Along the way, he owned various businesses and became an inventor. When I interviewed Sandy last week for a community event, he told me that when he was lying in that hospital bed in Detroit, losing his sight day by day, he made a promise to God that he would dedicate his life to eradicating blindness and ensuring that no one would ever have to go through what he did. And indeed, in 2012, the Greenbergs created the prize to end blindness by 2020. On December 14th of 2020, the award of $3 million in gold will go to the individual or team of researchers that does the most to end blindness across the globe. In his memoir, "Hello Darkness, My Old Friend," Greenberg credits Garfunkel with lifting him from the pits of despair and helping him begin navigating life as a blind man at just 20 years old. "He changed all of his habits to help me out," Greenberg said of Garfunkel. "He would take me out in the city, walk me to class, help me fix my tape recorder. Most importantly, he would read to me regularly. He would walk into a room and say, 'Sanford, darkness is going to read to you today.'" Memories of praying with Garfunkel at the window in their college room ignited a spiritual wonder in Greenberg. Sandy shared a full circle moment. One day, he says, after we graduated, I got a call from Arthur, who said he was dropping out of architecture school. "I want to go into music business with my friend Paul," he told Sandy, "but I need $400, which at the time was a substantial sum. At the time, Sandy had all of $404 in his life savings account. Before the end of the day, he had transferred $400 to Art. Sandy said, "I have to talk about the centrality of my then girlfriend, now wife, Sue, who has always been there for me. When I went blind, I was convinced she would leave me. She stayed with me through the ugliest part of my life. She was valorous, and in my mind, the hero of the book, certainly the center of gravity for my life. You can read it. She's on every page." My dear friends, here is a story involving 3 human beings whose lives were inextricably changed by the same event. For Sandy, for Sue and Art, Sandy's sudden blindness was the bump in the road that shook up their cup in life. The decisions they made then were not short-term, but lifelong, and weren't trivial, but profoundly consequential. And most notably and nobly, they weren't convenience-based, but character-driven. What came out of their cup that day That period was loyalty, was friendship, was faith, was courage, was empathy and kindness. Friends, a final story about the Rebbe, which I included in Positivity Bias. Along with millions of Jews across Europe, the Rebbe and his wife were uprooted from their home during World War II. And in June of 1940, they fled Paris upon the German invasion, arriving safely in Vichy in the south of France. Nevertheless, it was only relatively safe because life anywhere in Nazi-occupied Europe was extremely unpredictable and dangerous for Jews. Reb David Aaron Newman, who lives in Williamsburg, told the following story that happened during that period. And I quote, "In the midst of all this chaos and upheaval, my family was forced to split up. I was sent to an orphanage in Marseille. The orphanage housed some 40 or maybe 50 children, many of them as young as 3 and 4 years old. Some of them knew that their parents had been killed. Others did not know what had become of them. Often you would hear children crying, calling out for their parents who were not there to answer. As the days wore on, the situation grew more and more desperate and food became more scarce. Many a day we went hungry. And then, in the beginning of the summer 1941, a man came to the rescue. We didn't know his name. We simply called him Monsieur because that was French for Mr. Every day, Monsieur would arrive with bags of bread, the long French baguettes, and tuna or sardines, sometimes potatoes as well. He would stay until every child had eaten. Some of the kids were so despondent that they didn't want to eat. He used to put those children on his lap. He used to tell them a story. He would sing to them. He would feed them by hand. He made sure everyone was fed. With some of the kids, he'd sit next to them on the floor and cajole them into eating, feeding them with a spoon. He was like a father to these children. He knew every child by name, even though we didn't know his. We loved him and looked forward to his coming. Monsieur came back day after day for several weeks. And I would say that many of the children who lived in the orphanage at that time owe our lives to him. If not for him, I, for one, wouldn't be here. Eventually, the war ended. I was reunited with my family. We left Europe and we began life anew. In 1957, I came to live in New York. And that's when my uncle suggested that I meet a very famous rabbi named the Lubavitcher Rebbe. Of course, I agreed. And I scheduled a time for an audience with the Rebbe's secretary. At the appointed date, I came to the Chabad headquarters at 770, and I sat down to wait. I read some Psalms, and I watched the parade of men and women from all walks of life who had come to see the Rebbe. Finally, I was told that it was my turn, and I walked into the Rebbe's office. He was smiling, and suddenly he stood up to greet me. He says, "Das is Davidl," which is Yiddish for, "This is David." I thought, how does he know my name? And then I nearly fainted. I was looking at Monsieur. The Rebbe was Monsieur. And he had recognized me before I recognized him. It was unbelievable. It was in such acts of care and consolation that we are able to discern the early signs of the Rebbe emerging into his role as spiritual leader of the Jewish people. Was it character traits like these that the Rebbe was referring to in his letter above that revealed themselves in the midst of such madness? Friends, the past half a year has been the most existentially grueling, demanding, and testing for our generation as a whole, and for many of us as families and individuals. We have lost the sense of control and predictability we crave as human beings, and the rhythm and routine of our lives has been upended and in some ways, irrevocably changed. Worse still, we do not have the clarity of the future. And it is this uncertainty, perhaps more than anything else, that has eroded our sense of stability and security for the time being. And where have we turned as a society? What are the questions we're asking ourselves collectively and individually? We're asking, when will this end? Who is to blame? Which countries have done better and which have done worse? Did our government fail us? Did they play politics at the expense of saving lives and economy? Another big question on the greatest minds. What will a post-COVID world and reality look like? Has travel, the workplace, social interaction, physical contact changed forever? In other words, instead of focusing inward and spending this period asking, answering, seeking, discovering, and investing on what is inside our societal and individual cups. Many are focused on what's outside the cup, on who caused our coffee to spill, and on how to secure the lid of our cups so it never spills again. My friends, here's a little joke to lighten the mood. You know the joke of the great fellow. What happens? He wants to fix his car. Why? Because his brakes are broken. He's an Israeli. He goes to the local guy in Israel, to the local car fixer, a mechanic, and he says to him, could you fix the brakes? He says, come back to me in a week. Comes back to me. He says, oh, it's a really big deal. It's going to cost you 6,000 shekel to fix the brakes. The guy says, forget the brakes, fix the horn. So, here's the point I want to share with you. I am all for a smooth and easy ride in life. I bless you that, friends. My blessing to you on this special day is that this year bring you only peace, only prosperity, and only secure serenity. But to ignore the unique conditions we've been given to address the most important question of life and to evolve into our best self is to evade and escape a golden opportunity for authentic soul searching, self-awareness, personal development, and transformation. Quote God in the film Bruce Almighty. Let me ask you something. If someone prays for patience, do you think God gives them patience? Or does he give them the opportunity to be patient? If he prays for courage, does God give him courage? Or does he give him opportunities to be courageous? If someone prayed for the family to be closer, do you think God zaps them with warm, fuzzy feelings? Or does he give them opportunities to love each other? Well, friends, over the past half a year, God has definitely given us opportunities, and many, to become more patient, courageous, and loving. If I were to sum up the most important lesson of this period, it is that we cannot control the circumstances of our life, but we can always control our reactions to those circumstances. And how we react is entirely based on what is inside our cup. So here's the big question that requires some honesty. Over the past months, when our lives were disrupted and the going was tough, what spilled out? Humility, generosity, compassion, faith, joy, and gratefulness? Or anger, bitterness, harsh words, and reactions? The simple truth of life is that how we fill our cup determines what comes out when the going is tough. And the same is true of our children. We simply cannot control what is outside their cup in life, no matter how much we would like to. But what we can do is invest in what is inside of their cup. Put beautifully by the former president of the United States, Roosevelt. He says the following: we cannot always build the future for our children, but we can always build our children for the future. The real job of a parent is not to secure a perfectly happy future for our child. Once again, that is impossible. It's not in our control. But what we can do is provide them with the tools, the attitudes, the beliefs, and the good character that will allow them to maintain their equilibrium and empathy, their grace and dignity, their faith and fortitude when they encounter bumps in the road. And so instead of occupying ourselves with worries and with anxieties and distractions and fixating on the dangers of the present and the uncertainties of the future, let's utilize this period to make meaningful investments each and every day in building up our family's emotional, moral, perspectival, relational, and spiritual fitness and immune system, such that we can overcome and transcend any challenge the future may hold. Instead of asking, why me? Or what will be? Let us condition ourselves to ask, how can I become the best version of me? This then is my blessing and invitation to all of us as we begin the awesome high holidays this year. These are precious moments. If you can make it once to a synagogue or to join us in one way or another, join us to hear the shofar as we herald in this beautiful new lease of life. this new Aneh, this new year of joy and love and light. Let us make this year one in which we work to fill our cups with gratitude, with forgiveness, with joy, with words of affirmation, with kindness, with gentleness and love for others. And in this merit, my brothers and sisters, may Hashem follow the custom of His children who pour the Kiddush wine every Friday night to the point of overflowing the cup. May He fill up our cups of life with blessing, with joy to the point of overflowing, bringing forth for our families, communities, and the wider world excellent health, stability, prosperity, nachas, love, and light for us all. Shana Tova Umituka.